Hey pushers, Doc Rogers here. Little introductory video to get you all started here as we're looking at the beginning of period 6. So we want to really try to establish some context. Okay, the Civil War and Reconstruction are over, and now we're going to look at what does the country do now that it's been reunited and it feels so good. Maybe. All right, but we're going to really start to look at that as we're diving into this time period. So, a lot of things going on, a lot of things we're going to need to make sure we're remembering. Make sure you're taking notes on each one of those individual key concepts throughout the period. But let's start talking about the overall context of this time period, okay? So let's take just a second here and let's talk about this. One of the ways I like to teach this time period is by looking at three regions of the United States. And it's the same three regions we've really been talking about up to this point. And let's start off with the first one that we're going to look at, and that is the West, the New West, all right, if you will. Okay, yes, we've added some Western states. California, Nevada, Oregon are already have already become states by this point, but we're going to continue to add more. All those territories that you see in blue there, those are going to become states eventually. Colorado gets added. Of course, Kansas and Nebraska get added right before the Civil War. So westward expansion is still the name of the game. The Homestead Act, the Transcontinental Railroad are going to really have an impact on the settling of the western parts of the United States. And the government is going to really support that. They're going to really push and push to have more and more people head out west because of the opportunities that it gives them and because of the fact that it's going to benefit the country economically. So we're going to see a lot of ranching and farming continue out west, which of course the western states were the breadbasket of the country for a long time. That's still going to continue, but we're also going to see now ranching, okay, cattle drives coming up from Texas, bringing those cattle up to meet the Transcontinental Railroad in central Kansas and in Nebraska so that that beef can be sent further or back east to feed all of those hungry people. All right. But we'll also see kind of a romanticism of the individual out in the West. Okay. The whole notion that I don't need anybody to help me. I can just go out there and do my own thing. All right, etc. But the caveat to that is a lot of the reasons why people were able to afford to move westward because the government offered subsidies on land and territory and made it easier for people to buy land in this new part of the country. All right. And so that's one of the reasons why we're going to see a huge influx of people, not just people from the eastern half of the United States, but also a lot of immigrants moving out into the West and settling small towns. We're also going to see a small number initially, but as time goes on more and more, a number of African Americans that will leave the South and that will head into the West to look for new opportunities itself as well. All right. So we want to realize some of that thing. All right, and that's the West. So that's our first place that we're going to make a stop and talk about. The second place we're going to look at is going to be the New South, quote unquote. I'm going to move myself out of the way there. The New South. All right, which of course is going to come to mean the, shall we say, the establishment of industry in the South. The South is going to recognize that one of the reasons they lost in the war was because they were lagging behind the North when it came to industrialization. And so a point of pride, a point of emphasis for a lot of Southern states is going to be to attempt to try to get back some of that and try to push ahead and build industrial centers in some of these major cities that we're going to start to see emerging in the South. Okay. All right. But at the same time, as the South is going to try to move forward in industrializing, there's a large chunk of the South that is going to also try to hold on to the past and remain largely agricultural and maintain those agricultural practices of plantations, growing cotton, etc. But now they don't have the slave labor in order to produce all that cotton at a very cheap price. So these plantation owners have to come up with something else. And thus, sharecropping and tenant farming are born. And as we have talked about in Reconstruction, sharecropping is basically slavery in name only. Okay. And so we want to make sure that we're very, very clear about that. So not much is going to change in terms of rights, even for some of these freed slaves, a lot of them are going to be living on the exact same land they were living on before. They're going to be farming the exact same land they were before, picking cotton on the exact same land they were living on before. But now they're not getting any money for it. Okay. Well, they weren't getting any money for it before, but now they're really not getting any money for it. So the question then becomes, what's the difference for them? Are they really being treated any differently? And this whole notion of African Americans being equal to whites is going to get challenged in a big way by a large number of people in the South, a large number of whites in the South, let's be honest, who are going to really push for segregation laws. And that's going to be upheld by the United States Supreme Court in the case of Plessy v. Ferguson. All right. And that, as a result of the win in that court case for the southern states, a lot of these states are going to really push for segregation laws to become widespread. And they're going to segregate every single part of their lifestyle. And that's going to lead to what we call the rise of Jim Crow, because we refer to these laws as the Jim Crow laws. Now, some of these segregation laws are not just going to exist in the southern states. And this is a big thing we need to make sure that we understand. There are going to be segregation laws that are going to exist in states in the West and the Central Plains. Kansas had segregation laws in many different cases, all right? And some northern states, okay, are going to also establish segregationist types of laws. But we really, really tie this because it becomes very widespread in the southern states. All right, and lastly, we're going to take a look at the northern or the northeastern states. And one of the big things that we're going to start to see is the rise of industrialization. As we have talked about, the new economies, the market economy and the industrialization of the early 1800s, it pales in comparison to what happens post-Civil War to these states as they continue to grow and expand economically. Industrialization and unfettered laissez-faire capitalism is going to be the name of the game in these large growing population states in the northeastern part of the country. All right, we are going to see factories emerge and people who were once extremely poor or often middle class become extremely wealthy. All right, as a result of this new industrialization, and it's going to change some of the ways in which Americans view wealth, view power, and view the government. All right. And so we're going to see some changes to that that'll come as a result of the industrialization of the northeastern part of the country. But that's the basic rundown of what we're going to be looking at here in period 6. All right. So make sure you take a look at all these different things. Okay. Think about it in terms of these 3 regions. Okay. What's stayed the same? What changes? All right. And what is the impact that that's going to have on the country as a whole? All right, A-Pushers, I'm super excited to be working with all of you. Some of you are new to the game, just joining us from another class. Some of you are old hat at all of this. We're going to get through all of this together. If you need me, please make sure you drop a comment or drop a question in your private channels, or shoot me an email and I'll get back with you as quick as I can. All right, take care of yourselves. Good luck on your study of period 6. Ask me if you need something.